There are two versions of my childhood tapes. Part 5. A story by user like I did. It had taken power over me once before, and I realized that it could happen again. Maybe it already had. But what I couldn't get out of my mind was that Mum had saved me back then. Why would she push us back in now? So, what should we be prepared for? Luke asked. Hard to say. I mean, if you can't trust your own mind, you just have to go with whatever you believe is real at the moment. There's no survival guide or anything like that. We just have to do our best and hope we survive, Lee said. Fantastic. Lee gave him a half smile. It helps not to be alone. I wouldn't have made it without my friends back then. You have each other, and that matters a lot. Well, for what it's worth, you have us as well. Our parents might be dicks, but we're here for you, Lee, my brother said. Besides, someone who's already been in hell knows how to survive it. I'm still feeling normal, at least I think so, I said. What about you, Luke? He started fumbling with his ring around his finger. Mostly normal, although I've never punched Dad before. And I never threatened our parents with a knife before. To be fair, they deserved that, Lee said, and the three of us laughed. For a moment, we really felt normal. Why do you think they chose you for the show? Why not Luke or me? I asked after a while. I'm not sure. Maybe because I was Alex's age. Who's Alex? Lee looked away. He was the main character, next to Wally. The real star? Luke asked. Lee nodded. So why don't we get that guy? Maybe if they have. I don't know where he is, Lee interrupted with no further explanation. Luke started massaging his temples. I gotta go check on Jacob and Ellie. He gave me a look I didn't understand and walked outside. Do you know what happened to all those children that ran away from home? I asked Lee after a while. He smiled, but there was still some sadness in his eyes. They got to go home, although most of them weren't children anymore at that point. I bit my lip. The thought hadn't left my mind that I was almost one of them. And as hard as I tried to make my mind work, I couldn't remember more about that time. Is there a way we can see that show? I'd like to know. No, Lee interrupted again. We left no traces of it, and trust me, you do not want to see it. But I already have. Well, when I was younger, I was one of the kids, but I don't remember it. Lee looked me up and down. How old are you? He asked. 28. So you were 11 or 12 when Wally aired. Almost too old, he started rubbing his face again. Did your parents ever tell you that I was in it? I shook my head. You said that Wally is dead. Are you sure about that? I asked. He nodded and looked away again. I knew there was more to it. Lee looked like he'd been through a lot, and I could tell that he wasn't quite ready to open up about all the trauma. But he tried. The producer slit his throat in front of my eyes. That's when I realized this wasn't really about Wally, he was a pawn just like the rest of us. Shit, that producer lady really is ruthless. Lee frowned. Not a lady, a man. He was really charismatic too, which makes him even scarier. Are you sure he was the producer? My parents were talking about a woman. Maybe it's a new one. Maybe that's why it's starting again. I gotta make a phone call. Can I borrow your phone? He asked. I handed it over after checking if my parents had tried to contact us. Nothing. No calls. No texts. Lee walked out to the hallway but came back seconds later. The door to your brother's room is open. I immediately jumped up and followed Lee to the room next to ours. It was empty, and on the white sheets was a red stain. Fuck! I shouted, Luke, but of course, there was no answer. Maybe they went downstairs to get some food? Lee asked, but he didn't sound very convincing. I shook my head. He would have told us. Maybe they left. Your brother seemed suspicious. Maybe he was scared for his daughter or no, I whispered. Luke would never leave me alone. The hotel was empty. There was nobody behind the reception, no one in the lobby or the hallways. A massive building, simply wiped clean. A nagging feeling spread through my body, the feeling that we had missed a lot during the short night that we'd spent inside the rooms. It's starting. They are here. They must be, Lee whispered as he looked towards the front door. Give me my phone. I tried to reach Luke, but he didn't answer. I sent him a text, but of course, he didn't reply to that either. Something terrible was happening. We could leave. I don't see anybody outside. We could get weapons or reinforcements, Lee said and looked me in the eyes. After I didn't answer, he added, but you're not leaving, are you? He asked. I shook my head. I'm going to look for my brother. All right, then I'm also staying. We're family, right? I wanted to trust Lee. I felt bad for him. All of this mess was my parents' fault. They were possibly even the reason that Lee was an orphan. Who else would have a better reason to mess with us? I was starting to think that Lee was doing just that. Because when I tried to reach Luke, I saw a text that Lee had sent to a strange number. The message said, "It's not me," which I didn't understand. And our current location. But the message wasn't sent earlier when he borrowed my phone. It was sent around 4 a.m., around the time I had dozed off. Staying with Lee might have been more dangerous than just going to look for Luke on my own, but right now I knew I needed him. He was the one they really wanted. After all, Luke and I were second choices. All I had to do was not let him notice my mistrust. The hotel had 11 floors, a small lobby, a kitchen, an inside pool, and a conference hall. The kitchen was locked, so we decided to check out the conference hall next. With a sinking feeling inside my stomach, I opened the big white door. What the f***, Lee whispered. We were standing in front of a long table with chairs all around it. At the very top, across from us, sat Luke, tied to a chair. He was wearing a purple blazer, his head was tilted to the side as if something was wrong with his neck. There was blood on his face. Lee tried to grab my arm, but missed it as I ran across the room to my brother. Luke! His head slowly moved back to normal. When he saw me, his eyes opened wide. Then his gaze went over to Lee and he shook his head. Get out of here, he croaked. Oh man! I heard a different voice shout. At first, I couldn't tell who it was, so I looked at Lee, who I thought was the only other person in the room. But then I realized that there was someone else here who had been standing next to the door with a tape recorder in hand. Jacob? Oh my God, Max. We're filming a scene right now. You fucked it up. He had a smile on his face, but his eyes seemed angrier than I'd ever seen them before. No, I whispered. Then I noticed that he was holding something in his other hand. A hunting knife. Did you hurt Luke with that? I asked. He nodded, like a proud boy. Jacob was almost as tall as Luke and could seem crazy intimidating if you didn't know that he was actually super sweet. Normally. His eyes were opened wide as sweat was going down his forehead. Only a little bit. He's totally fine. Where's Ellie? I asked, looking at Luke. For a split second, I saw the devastated look on his face and thought of the worst. She'll be right back, Jacob whispered, his eyes twitching for a split second. Anyway, you and your cousin, especially your cousin, are more than welcome to join us, he asked while moving the knife around. I looked at Lee, who was still standing at the door. He could have run away, but he didn't. Instead, he was making eye contact with me, and from what I interpreted, it looked like, together we can take him. But before we could move, we started hearing the sound of heels walking on the wooden floor. They stopped right behind Lee. A woman started caressing his cheek with long, black nails, and Lee lost all the color in his skin. She was wearing a checkered jacket, denim pants, and purple shoes. In her left arm, she was holding Ellie. My eyes opened wide. The woman smiled. Hello there, she said in a playful tone. Give her to me, please, Luke begged. The woman walked past Lee and towards the table where she took a seat on the right side next to Luke. Ellie reached out her arms when she saw him and my heart broke a little. But at least she seemed fine. She was smiling and didn't have a single scratch on her. Come on in, Lee. We have a lot to discuss. He walked towards me, and together we sat down on the left side of the table. It felt surreal, like we had just joined a regular work meeting. Jacob followed and sat down next to the woman. All of us were suddenly eerily calm, except for Jacob, who still had that insane look on his face. All right, let's get straight to the point. I was personally asked to take charge of the reboot of Dr. Wallace Adventure Club. And I have a proposition for you boys. I swallowed. You're the new producer, huh? Lee asked casually. What happened to the old one? He is very busy, but he trusts me to do well with this task. Right. And what's stopping us from punching you in the face and running off? She shrugged. Nothing. I wouldn't stop you. So, no need to punch me. I am giving you an opportunity right now to start a conversation with us. As you know, we get what we want and we will always find you again. What I'm doing now is give you the opportunity to get the little girl out of here. We're not interested in her. How? Luke asked, slowly coming back to his senses. I don't need all of you. And, believe it or not, I don't want you guys to hate us, but join us, which I realize won't happen if we keep the babe. So I'm letting one of you leave with her. The other ones stay at the hotel with me and talk. That's it. She gave us a big smile. I will leave the room and let you discuss, though I expect an answer when I get back. She got up from her chair, walked over to our side, and gave Ellie to me. Then she gestured something towards Jacob, who got up and left the room with her. I gave Ellie a kiss on her head and then gave her to Luke, who hugged her tight. There are no windows or other doors. We can't get out of this room, Lee said. I carefully touched Luke's face where the blood was starting to dry. Jacob did this to you? He nodded. You know, we were wondering if watching the tapes did anything to us, but I didn't even think about the fact that Jacob had seen parts of it too. I swallowed. Luke, are you normal? I asked. I don't know, man, I'm not sure what normal feels like anymore. I think it's safest if you don't trust anyone. I agree, Lee chimed in. So what do we do? For the first time, I was sure of what needed to happen. Luke, you go. You take Ellie and get yourself to a hospital. I will listen to what the producer has to say. Max, no way. No fucking way. I put my hand on his shoulder and leaned in closer. We've been cursed since the first moment Mum and Dad got involved in all this. But we're adults now. Ellie isn't. Get her out.
This is the fifth part of this story. What happened to Jacob? Is he an accomplice of the producers of the show? What will happen to Ellie? What will be the fate of Max now he volunteered to listen to the producer? Can Max and Luke trust Lee? To catch the next part of this story, share and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to access all the notifications from this channel. And also, kindly like and share this video to show your support to the Double Dutchman. Thank you, and we'll see you to our next episode.